Turner's delicate coloured glass skylight has to be removed for restoration. This will be a tricky operation that risks damaging the original glass.
Well, this original structure has got some very fine cast lead details, and you can see that in places it's coming away, so the whole structure is liable to be a bit frail.
How we lift this, how we get it out of the opening, will be a fairly delicate operation.
That's crown glass, and that's only about 1 millimetre or 1.5 millimetres thick. So as you flex the frame, there's a real danger to the glass of cracking the glass.
Losing the glass or it being damaged in any way would be a bit of a disaster, frankly.
So we're hoping for better news rather than worse.
Fingers crossed.
After several hours of careful reinforcement and gentle persuasion, the team succeeds in removing the skylight.
It's really pretty weak, the metal structure. Come out okay and unscathed, so if we pack it carefully for transport now, we'll be home and dry and get on with the conservation work.
120 miles away, in the shadow of Wells Cathedral in Somerset, Holy Well Glass specialises in stained glass restoration. A young and skillful workforce applies traditional skills and endless patience to giving new life to damaged lead and glass windows from all over the country. Tucked away in the back of the workshop, Steve Clare is starting the lengthy process of restoring Turner's skylight. The glass is mostly intact, but the lead glazing bars that hold the glass in place are covered in layers of putty and paint, and in some places have separated from the wooden frame. Steve needs to decide whether the skylight is repairable or whether it must be renewed.
The challenge is to take away all the historic layers of decoration and to stabilise the thing, but really not to go too far and to lose the whole flavour and originality of it, because basically there's no absolute need to take it all apart and to renew much of it. Most of the original material's there and it's salvageable, and then we hope we can pick it up and mount it back into position. So we hope it'll sit there for a long time as part of Turner's fantastic little lodge.
He starts by applying a solvent that will help to strip away the layers of old paint and putty.
You've got to have the right mindset for this sort of work. It takes a lot of hours and it's risky because you're scraping away layers adjacent to the thin glass. So there is a potential for disaster there. So it gently does it over a lot of hours, paring away with a scalpel until you get to the lower layers of paint. But you can see that there's been some really ham-fisted repainting and redecorating over the centuries. So we'll get back to these tiny lead sections and mask it all really carefully so that we just get paint on them neatly, so the whole delicacy of the thing will be regained. So far we've managed not to crack any more glass, so it's sort of on tenterhooks the whole time that you handle the thing.
As Steve removes the layers of unwanted paint and putty, he uncovers more clues about how the skylight was originally constructed.
I found this little bit of tinned iron strip on the underside, And I think that originally that was soldered to the centre of this glazing bar, and that these are just nail holes. So that was the original fixing strip. And if you look really closely, you can see a little rust line there, which I think is the edge of a strip like this. I'm wondering if I can reattach it, whether I can clean the edges and resolder.
A week later, Steve's patient work is bearing fruit.
So if we look at the original glazing bar here with the decoration, build-up of decoration over centuries on it, it's just a lump of cream paint and putty. But if you look along this area where I've pretty well cleaned off surface layers, you can see that it's a really rather nice, delicate lead casting. It's adrift, as you can see there, so I need to solder it back into place. But you can begin to see the delicacy of it.
And soon, Steve is ready to start the delicate task of removing the damaged panes of glass. The work is as slow and painstaking as ever.
A lot of this is like watching paint dry, I'm afraid. Hours of scraping. And you can see that the glass runs from much thicker in this section to very thin here, so it's almost certainly a piece of crown glass. So an original bit. The crown glass method was really prevalent at the period the house was built, and they blew really big crowns of glass which were furled out using centrifugal force rather than blown into a cylinder. And they became very adept at that period in spinning the discs of glass, and they were quite often up to 5-6 feet across, so huge, great things, and so very thin, and having great clarity, which is what they wanted.
In November 2016, the Skylight makes the return journey from Wells to London and is ready to be reinstated in Sandicombe Lodge. The Skylight has been cleaned, restored and reinforced, but is still delicate and heavy. Coaxing it back into place will not be easy. 2 men will manoeuvre the Skylight from below, whilst a third squeezes into the cramped roof space to help it into place from above.
Yeah, we're going into that room.
And your end's going up first, and we're going up that end. Okay, you got that, Chris? Yeah.
At first, all seems to be going well, but just as the team try to settle the Skylight into its frame, they hit a snag.
Back this way. That's interrupting right on that bit of wood, the bar. Ah.
You're kidding me.
No. God almighty. That's not going to go in wood.
What's the problem, Jack?
There's a
New bit of wood by the roof light is going to stop it going in with a handle. Okay, we're going to have to come down with that. And
the reinforcing bar on the top of the Skylight is coming up against a newly installed roof joist and stopping the Skylight from sitting in its frame.
Okay. Right, I've got this end.
There's no choice but to manoeuvre the heavy Skylight back down again and cut part of the joist away. The first attempt doesn't quite work, so the Skylight has to come down again. But eventually, Turner's 200-year-old wood, iron, lead and glass structure is safely in place again, and the team can fit the remaining pieces of glass.